everyone. Welcome from across this gorgeous planet. We are one mountain, many paths, where our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni call the planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphony. And together we declare that the last day of the old face of evolution is honored as the first day of the new face of creation. I am Christina Tehel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josefa and Kirsten Zohar, and we are delighted to be here with each and every one of you today. I welcome all the new people. Please do share that you are new in the chat box. We want to hear from you. When you do chat with Zoom, chat to everyone by checking that your chat settings say all panelists and attendees and not just all panelists. Use the chat function to say hi, to let us know where you're from, and to resonate the Dharma. In one mountain, many paths, we are connected, we are whole, and we are expressions of the entire process of creation. We are activating a new humanity and we are awakening as a new species. Homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapien. We are a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo. We are all of it. No one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. We're joyous about being with you today in week 223. Let everyone know about One Mountain, Many Paths. We are doing this primarily through word of mouth. Leadership and relationship around our community is an absolutely sacred opportunity. Yesterday, for instance, our One Mountain study group around reclaiming Eros deepened our capacity of prayer and our capacity for evolutionary love. On Facebook, we are facebook.com/One Mountain, Many Paths. On YouTube, we are One Mountain, Many Paths. And right now we are streaming live on both YouTube and on Facebook. So please take a moment and share the live links in the chat box or on your other social media channels with your various communities. After our communion, we will send you an email to invite your friends and family. And go ahead and share that email right away. Spend time on our website, onemountainmanypaths.org. On the top menu of the homepage or the bottom of each page, you will find our membership links. A lot of the main teachings in church are also in books by Dr. Marc Gafni and Barbara Marx Hubbard. You'll find the books on our resources page on the website, like Your Unique Self, The Radical Path to Personal Enlightenment, which does absolutely deepen the astonishing mystery and awaken you to your unique self. With that, I give you what to expect today. We begin with the first principles recap from last week. Afterwards, Dr. Mark sets our intention, and then David resonates the evolutionary love code that we're working with. We move into prayer and then evolutionary sermons with Dr. Mark, and often with a piece from Barbara Marx Hubbard. Then Krista invites us to commit our outrageous acts of love and contribute our gifts to this revolution. And we may do a short first principles, first values talk at the end. And then we do bring everyone on for our goodbyes. Mark wrote what he called evolutionary love codes, still writes them. And Mark and Barbara studied the codes together, often comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. These codes grow out of a radical commitment over 100 collective years, crystallizing the new story of humanity. Quote, evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love, unquote. Each communion is a standalone, and every week's communion builds on the week before. One Mountain, Many Paths is radically committed to telling the new story. So here goes my One Mountain, Many Path recap from last week. The new existential risk, not the death of humanity, but the death of our humanity. The dehumanizing creep of machine intelligence. What happens when we become irrelevant? When the issue isn't as it was in the 20th century, exploitation, but the issue of the 21st century is that most human beings in the world won't hold jobs because AI has taken over. What happens when we are no longer needed as customers? That's where the real threat is, and it's real. Now we're needed as customers. But what happens when this very, very tiny elite that is controlling the AI world in a world of scarce resources no longer needs most human beings? If there's not a script of unique self that shapes our policy, if there's not a movement towards unique self symphony that shapes our education, in the 21st century, the challenge is not exploitation. The challenge is that most of humanity becomes irrelevant. But we were meant to be here. The anthropic principle, which points out the fine tuning of the cosmos for the emergence of humanity, the principle that says that actually our deep inwardness is the space we create meaning. We're not alone. Before there was a human neocortex, there was mitosis and meiosis. We are at home in the cosmos. Unfortunately, for countless writers in the Googleplex world, the inward space of creation of meaning is irrelevant. Rather, meaning is created by markets acting upon us, and the entire internet is built to tune and herd us into a benign, effective social unit. This will destroy our very humanity. We become replaceable. When we become replaceable and we're not needed, then we're an utter disaster. Then we face yet another existential risk, the death of our humanity. Uniqueness, though, happens to be a first principle of cosmos. The evolution of uniqueness is structural to cosmos. The irreducible dignity of every human being is that we've got a unique quality of intimacy, which is not part of hive intelligence. We've got a unique perspective. We have an irreducible, unique way of being and becoming. We have a song to sing and a poem to write and a story to live that is irreducibly significant. We are not merely separate selves. We are unique expressions of the one. We are part of the field of consciousness. Reality itself intended us. Human dignity is based on the fact that we're not exchangeable cogs and we're not just acted upon. We are here together to meet these challenges in which no human voice is lost and every human being emerges together in this larger explosion of outrageous love. That's a force that can sweep away all tyrannies, whether they're ostensibly benign tyrannies with smiles on their faces or the more overt forms. We are not alone. We're not objects. We are creative subjects. All human beings are born creative. The entire evolutionary impulse, the creativity of cosmos, lives in each of us individually and uniquely. With that, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and sacred space of One Mountain, Many Paths, and I turn my word to you, beloved Dr. Marc Gafni.
Thank you to Haley. That was awesome. That awesome, everybody? Could we find each other in the chat box? That was a fantastic Dharma recap, and it was so important what we did last week. And that recap was so wild. I'm just going to go to the chat box myself. Let me find my chat box. Let's go to the chat box. Okay, so who loved that Dharma recap? Okay, who loved that Dharma recap, right? Who else loved it? Who else loved it? Anybody else? Right, anybody else? Hello, right? Hello, right? So let's, right? Isn't that gorgeous, right? Thank you, right? We respond to each other. We feel each other. You ever been to a black gospel church where, the minister's saying something and they say, go minister, hallelujah. I can feel you. It's moving in, right? Let's make it right. Who's ever heard that before? Anyone ever heard that? Right? So that's how we have to live, right? Right? So we get excited about each other, right? We celebrate each other. And today I want to talk about celebration. So I'm going to be excited. I'm excited to hear Haley's Dharma recap. And every word was a quote, but she took the different pieces and organized them and wove it together through Tahaliness, right? And spend so much time doing it, right? Oh my God, right? So hallelujah, right? And one of the places, when I was in a different world, there was a world that I lived in for quite a while before I really got existential risk, right? And the actual moment we're poised between utopia and dystopia. And I was teaching what I thought was, the best vision we could have about what it means to be a human being in spirituality, right? But without the context of existential risk, or what we've called the second shock of existence, right? And the second shock of existence. Now, when I say the second shock of existence, how many people know what I mean? I just want to check kind of, right? The first shock of existence is the realization, right, of the death of the human being, right? In dawn man. Oh my God, right? Dawn man, prehistoric man, woman. We realize we're going to die. And the second shock is the potential death of humanity, which we're facing today. And that began to dawn on me in a real way when I started studying in like 2010, right, or 11. And some of you remember who were at our board meetings for the Center for Integral Wisdom, where we began to talk about it, right, in a serious one. We called it the second shock of existence. Okay, right? So let's just stay close. Let's stay close for a second. But before then, when I was doing this earlier version of teaching, I would often teach in both synagogues, but often churches and, all sorts of just, venues around the country and around the world. And the place I loved to teach most, right, was in an African-American Black gospel church. There's nothing like it, right? Because they let the word move in them. And there's a reason that the Black gospel church animated the revolution of the civil rights movement. And that's what our chat box is. So in the chat box, okay, even when I'm saying something now, if you can feel it, say, I feel it. And if it's moving you, say it's moving in me, right? If it's resonating, man, it's resonating. I'm awake, I'm alive, right? So who's awake and alive now? Who can feel it now, right? And let's, in the chat box, that's, right, the center of everything is we're feeling each other. We're becoming, right, a unique self-symphony together in the chat box. And we're walking together. And we're doing this revolution together, right? We're together all the way. Like, oh my God, right? Like, oh my God. So here's a chant for today. Here's a new chant, just a quick chant for today. And I'm going to use this chant as our intention setting for today. We've got a lot to talk about today. I want to talk about, a little bit what happened. I didn't last week talk about what happened in the United States of America in the Capitol. And I did it, with some degree of intention for two reasons. One is we're not an American movement, we're a world movement. And so lots of people, at least half of the people, right, who are here with us today are from around the world, number one. But number two, right, I didn't actually think that it was the most important threat to humanity or even to democracy. And I'll explain why today, perhaps in our short first principles and first values section, which we'll do, at the top of the hour. But and I want to just share with you, sometimes one person sways something, and one person sways something when they're deeply involved. So Joycey, right, who's, deeply involved and really doing a brilliant job together with Christina Amelon and David in creating the evolutionary love codes and evolutionary love sermons, particularly, right? Work, you're right, and writing and editing, and just doing a gorgeous job. Joyce, you wrote me and said, "Wow, I really needed to hear this week about what was going on." Is that true, Joyce? Did you write that? You did, right? So we got on the phone because when someone really steps in and steps into leadership, right, then you've got to really honor that. And so Joyce and I and Suzette actually sat on the phone and talked a little bit. And I said I wanted to talk a little bit about that this week, right? Both to honor the events and to honor Joyce, right? Because an individual matters. When a person steps in and says, "I'm with you," well, that matters. Doesn't mean we have to agree all the time, but it means we have to hear each other. That's what it's all about. So I want to talk today, right, a little bit about what happened in the Capitol in the United States, but not only for Joyce, and not only because it matters, but also because it matters around the world, right? It's important from many perspectives. I want to talk about it from two, somewhat surprising perspectives. Okay? Okay. So I want to do that. I want to talk about that as kind of a threat to personhood and democracy. I want to go deep in, right? We have a code that David's going to resonate, right? And then we want to talk about in some deep way, what's the deeper threat to democracy? Right? What's the deeper threat? And how do we respond to it? Right? So it's never about, "Oh my God, this is a terrible problem." No, it's about actually seeing, diagnosing, right? Clearly getting the diagnosis. Who remembers the show, which when it was big on international television? I rarely open a television. I actually don't have a television, but I rarely open, those devices. But there was one show I loved. It was called House. It was about a doctor, House. Anyone remember that show? Anybody here remember House? Right? We got a couple of house people, yay? As House was this, this brilliant diagnostician. And in medicine, diagnosis is everything. Right? We can't heal the body politic without understanding what's wrong. And it's really, really important. So part of what we do here in One Mountain, Many Paths, is we try and we're standing for the new human. We're standing for the new humanity. But we can only stand for the new human and new humanity at this moment between dystopia and utopia. We're actually at a time between worlds and a time between stories. And we need to actually articulate the new story. But we have to actually understand very, very deeply what went wrong in the plot line of the old story, which actually is cause. And it's what in the old narrative that actually is the narrative now in the world, every place. It's the assumed narrative in the world. What in the fractured plot lines of that narrative are the generator functions, right, that have actually caused, that are caused right now in this moment, both for catastrophic risk and existential risk. If we can't understand that clearly, right, then we can't actually create the right medicine. And the right medicine is the new story. The right medicine is to heal the global intimacy disorder, right, through a new story that's actually a shared story, one that lives within us, that lives within reality itself, that actually begins to tell us that that which unites us is so much greater than that which divides us, and that actually that shared intimacy, just like in a couple, shared intimacy creates coherence. So in the world, shared intimacy creates coherence, global coherence. And we desperately need today global coherence because we need to act globally because all of our challenges are global. And so we're here together as revolutionaries. That's our energy. We are in a revolution, but for realsies. It's not another sweet thing to do, right? We're here for the revolution, right? We're not an inspirational church, synagogue, or mosque, although those are gorgeous things to have, or a secular humanist center, and we're not a human potential course. We are a revolution, but for real, utterly committed to each other in outrageous love, right? And to the articulation, right, of a new source code, right? The articulation of the vision of the new human and the new humanity, how Homo sapien becomes Homo amor. Because just like Da Vinci at this moment between worlds in the Renaissance, as the Black Death swept Europe, knew that only the telling of a new story about the human being and the divine, about nature and about reality, about who are we and where are we and what's there to do and how should we do it, only answering those essential questions based on the best information available, the best validated insights available, integrated into a larger whole, which is the news story. That was the only thing that could respond. And he responded in part successfully. And that birthed all the dignities of modernity. But in part, the response was wrong. There were fractures in the news story. There were travesties in the plot line, which need to be rewritten. And that's the news story. Okay? So who can feel that? Can we feel that together? Can we feel that together? And we articulate that in our setting of intention in some sense, right? Every week, right? We articulate it, we re-articulate it every week in order to locate ourselves, right? And we got to feel it, right? I want to feel it. And we're going to talk today about feeling. So here's a chant. Here's a chant. And Krista, maybe if you're up for it, maybe you'll put it in the chat box, right? And I have to acknowledge one thing, which I apologize. I have not gone out to get a new prescription of glasses, right? And part of the problem is I can't quite read the chat box as well as I should be able to, because I need a new prescription, and I don't quite want to get one because I don't know, because I'm in the middle of writing and don't want to do it, and don't want to go to a shop in the middle of COVID and all those good reasons. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Right? This is how we're together. This is our planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphony. This is a new way to call each other. And don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. And the name, in all the great traditions, means the Tao, spirit, right? Ultimate value underneath reality. The name, and it's personal. It knows your name, and it's ultimate personhood. And don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. Wherever I am in the world, let's sing it together. And don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. And just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. Last time. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. Yeah, that's our new chant, just to invite our revolution together. Oh my God. So its insides are lined with love. It's Jamie's birthday today. So we're going to hear Jamie again, Amor, our chant, right? Which is about eros, about love, about reality is eros. Reality is not ordinary love, which is the province only of human beings, but outrageous love, right? The love that animates reality itself and then comes alive uniquely in each one of us a unique configuration of outrageous love. Each of us, quite literally, evolutionary lovers, outrageous lovers. Amor, right? Our chant every week. Jamie, happy birthday, right? What's your birthday? Your birthday's the day, right? When reality decided, when God decided, I couldn't do it without you. God decided today I couldn't do it without Jamie. And happy birthday, Jamie, and happy birthday for all the birthdays. We're celebrating all of us. Celebration today. Jamie, take us inside. Oh my God. Yes. Ciao.
Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, 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 amor.
Give us the code, David. Blow us open. Love us open. We turn to David. Give us the code for this week.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. Everyone, this is a new code that really gives us context for what is unique self and why is it so important. This week's evolutionary love code. The unique self is the inward space of uniquely lived experience from which meaning is discovered. The unique self is under attack in multiple ways, including the assumption by big tech and big data that the human being is no more than a social self. The assumption of the spiritual traditions that the human being is either a true self or an obedient self, and the shared assumption world over that the human being is a separate self. The cultivation of unique self is therefore the overriding moral imperative at this moment in history. I'll just repeat it one more time so we can let it sink in a little bit more. The unique self is the inward space of uniquely lived experience from which meaning is discovered. The unique self is under attack in multiple ways, including the assumption by big tech and big data that the human being is either a social, no more than a social self. The assumption that the spiritual traditions have that the human being is either a true self or an obedient self, and the overriding shared assumption that the world over that the human being is merely a separate self. The cultivation of unique self is therefore the overriding moral imperative at this moment in history. With that, I turn my word to you, Dr. Mark.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, David. I want to just ask everyone, and we're going to talk about this, in some real way, in First Principles. But I want to just ask everybody full attention. I was checking. I got a note from someone to play with my microphone to make sure that it was up. And I just saw a couple of people send notes to people in our group while David was reading, right? So I just want to ask everyone, stay out of your devices, claim your inner center, right? Right? Literally the inability, that's what we're going to talk about today. It's so deep. We're going to talk about it in First Principles. I'm not going to talk about it now, but I just want to get it because it just arose in me now. The inability to actually stay centered, right? To stay inside, to always be responding to something, right? Is the source of collapse. It's both the source of personal collapse, and as we'll see, and that's what that code that David just read was about, right? It's also the source of civilizational collapse, where you can't locate. And take a look. Let's take a look at the code again. I'm going to look in the chat box. I'm going to just find the space inside. Take a look at the code, right? When you can't find, right, the unique self is the inward space, right, of uniquely lived experience from which meaning is discovered. So I've got to be able to sit and to place my attention both inside, place my attention on the conversation, place my attention on David, right, when he's talking, place my attention on each other, and actually rest in this space and create a cauldron of creativity, right? A cauldron of ecstatic urgency, right? A cauldron of outrageous love from which the revolution emerges. But it comes from, we're the outrageous lovers, And it's the way we practice. And I mean that like super gently, madly lovingly. But it was just a funny moment as David was talking about this placing of attention. Right? And I went to respond to someone who said, hey, we can't hear your microphone. So I had to look at my phone. I just noticed, oh my God, people are writing other things at the same time who are with us while David's talking, like, whoa, right? Let's place our attention, right? The nature of the attention economy is to steal your attention. So there's always an email to be written. There's always a response, but then you give up your own sovereignty, right? When you can't make a decision to place your attention, and to place your attention in Hebrew, placing attention is simat lev, the placing of your heart. So I place my heart here. Like, wow. Okay. So let's place our heart. So who's up for that? Anybody? Who's up for placing our heart? Right? Let's place our hearts here. Okay. We're going to place our hearts. Right? We're going to place our hearts. And with your permission, right, let's jump into prayer, which we do every week at this time. And I want to just offer one context for prayer. Right? What's prayer about? And let's feel each other. Let's stay in the chat box together. As you hear something, as it speaks to you, right? You want to add something, but not a whole nother, just like a yes, add a one line. So we're with each other. We're with each other. We've completely placed our attention together. I've placed my heart here. Okay. So I want to just share something with you. It's really beautiful. What does prayer mean? What prayer means is that cosmos is personal, and that's everything. And we're going to see that's going to have everything to do with what we talk about today, and it's going to have everything to do with what we talk about in First Principles a little bit later, right? Cosmos is personal, right? And the essence of unique self, which we began to talk about last week, we'll talk about a little bit in First Principles, and we'll dive even more deeply into next week. And we're establishing a Unique Self Institute, which is wildly important, with Claire Molinaire, who's directing that. It's unbelievably important. It's going to work together with the Outrageous Love Project, and together with the Eros Project, and together with One Mountain, and together with the festival, right? But unique self means my personhood matters, right? The quality of my personhood matters, right? My unique personhood is valuable because that's what personhood means. Personal means it's personal to you and me. It's not impersonal, right? It's not generic. It's personal, right? It's the quality of shahatiness. And it's we're just Jamie's birthday. It's the birth of the personhood of Jamieness, right? So unique self means reality's having a Jamie experience. It's a very big deal. It's a very big deal. I want to get that. Reality's having a Jamie experience. So let's get that, okay? So prayer affirms the personhood of cosmos. Personhood doesn't begin with Mark and Tom and Terry and Ken and Suzette, right? And Hans and Oriana, right? And Joycey, right? We participate in the field of personhood, right? We are unique, discrete expressions of personhood, but we're part of this larger overarching personhood of cosmos. So is there a personal God? Of course there's a personal God. It's absurd. But personal God's not Santa Claus, right? It's not, right, a particular vision of a Buddha, right? It's not even the Christian vision of Christ, right? It's not Hanuman, right? Those are all expressions of the face of cosmos, which is personal. And we call that the infinity of intimacy, at the infinity of intimacy that knows your name. And when we pray, we have this realization, cosmos is not just third person, the force of cosmos, right? The four forces animated by the force of Eros, although it's all of that. It's not just reality that lives in me, my own experience of self. And if I'm awake and alive and I can taste my enlightenment, I know that myself participates in the ultimate self of cosmos. That's first person. But reality is also personal holding me, right? Every place I go, I fall into the hands of the infinite personhood of cosmos that calls me. That's a primordial perspective of cosmos. First person lives in me. third person, the forces of reality, third person, and then I, thou, right? The great personhood of cosmos that calls me and knows me uniquely, right? Uniquely, infinitely, ultimately, irreducibly, uniquely. So we turn to Leonard Cohen. We've got a new Leonard Cohen. We've got children in this Leonard Cohen. And every child born is the celebration of a new face of personhood. So we're going to just to be in this hymn together. I'm going to ask, as we're in this hymn, and Leonard Cohen has agreed, after he's passed to the next world in continuity of consciousness, he's agreed to be with us every week, and he's with us every week. And, we chat, and it's awesome that he comes. And thank you, Leonard, for coming. Right? But as we're listening to Leonard Cohen, I want to invite, right? Place your heart. Don't send a text. Don't do something else. Right? Just we're right here all the way. Right? Leonard Cohen, take us inside, and then we pray. Oh my God. Yes. Cha. All the way.
Well, I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
And if you feel it, write it in the chat box. Just, I feel it. Feel it. Yes.
You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew ya. She tied you to her kitchen chair. She broke your throne and she cut your hair. And from your lips she drew them hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Together. Right? Let's ask for everything. Let's ask for everything. right? Prayer affirms the dignity of personal need. And unless I affirm the dignity of my own personal need, right, I can't ask for anyone else. I've got to be able to feel my own need and clarify my need, and then ask for the world. So let's ask, friends. Let's ask, right? Let's read some of the chats, right? Oh my God, right? Oh my God, I pray, right? Right? I pray that I focus on that which really matters. Shahati, what a gorgeous prayer, right? Right? I pray that I remember to smile often, right? And Terry, you got an awesome smile, right? And right? Oh my God, Joycey, right? I'm praying for, right? I'm praying for, right, a new story of democracy for the world to rise out of the chaos of January 6th. And we're going to talk about that, right? Paul, thank you for your text. I pray that we find and become, right, more amour for our world. Peter, my prayer is to be attentive, right, to place attention each moment by moment attention. Right? That's the whole thing. Right, I choose life and I choose attention and ever gorgeous. Right, Lady J, Jacqueline, I pray for the courage to complete every act of love that's mine to do. Medea, when you're here, we're here, right? Medea, your voice is just always, and big love to Ivan, right? I pray for Ivan to find another way to generate funds, right? So because he can't be a DJ during the pandemic. That's huge, right? David, I don't know my prayer, but I know that I need you, God, right? Oh my God, right? Right, Veronica, right? I need you close now, right? I pray for togetherness, right? Right, Tom, right? I pray that I see, right, all of what arises in me and the world around me as a sacred text, right? My life, it's one of the core pieces of our first principles. My life is a sacred text, a message from God. And we are often so much messengers that forgot our message, right? To be it, right? Oh my God, right? Harry, right? I pray for all the starvation to end in this world, right? Simona, right? Italiano, right? I pray to feel that I'm held by the infinity of intimacy and that everyone can feel it. And tell me how those volumes are doing that you're working on, right? Simona, yes, right? Rob, it was so awesome to be with you this week, right? I pray all souls get their way back, find their way back in love. Paul and Carol, oh my God, Paul and Carol, board meeting coming up, but can you believe it? Paul and Carol, unique self-relationships. Paul and Carol, a unique self-relationship themselves, right? I pray for our friend who contracted COVID, right? Caring for his 96-year-old mother, right? Moment-to-moment attention, right? I pray Krista Josepha to rest deeply, right? On fire for she, right? Sharon, welcome, right? Oh my God, right? That was fantastic, right? Right, Lady J, right? Inaka, right? I pray for health and love to feel all of us for a better world. Suzette, I pray for Paul, right? Who's Suzette's father-in-law, to find his way in the most beautiful way at this moment, right? In his life when he faces the end of his life, right? Lynn, thank you. I pray I choose wisely and I focus my attention, right? Jason, brother, I pray for freedom between the masculine and the feminine. And we'll talk about that in the next few weeks inside all of us. And between us, around us, one unique self-symphony. Amen to Haley, right? G, I pray for clarity and authenticity, abundance. Jackie, it's great to see you. And send love to Exochito if she's not with us. Right, did I get that? I think I got that. I was close to that, right, Jackie? I pray love, right? Capital love for ourselves, for each other. That's outrageous love. Tracy, I pray for my message to reveal itself, right? Right? Oh my God, I pray my heart's always receiving, Medea, and giving. Right, Tanya, right? I pray for more embodied, right? It lives in the body. The text through my body, more embodied clarity, right? Jamie, Benjamin, it's great to be with you this week, right? Benjamin is now actually working with my son and doing an awesome job. Thank you for giving me the capacity to feel and be in love. Raquel, right? I pray for delicious, intense, tender death, right? I want to die every day to my small self and be born again, right? Sherry, right? Lynn, I pray for clarity and self-love so I may love others, right? I pray for a peaceful presidential inauguration to Haley, right? Sandra Williams, my prayer, my own self-forgiveness, right? And all of us, and we're going to take all of the prayers, right? And we're going to lift them to the sky, right? We're going to lift them to the sky, right? As a bouquet and impress them on the lips of the infinity of intimacy. Oh my God, right? Thank you. It is it's such a wild honor to be together and such a wild delight. And we choose it again every second. So we're going to do two parts now. Let's breathe for a second, okay? Let's breathe for a second. Okay, like, oh my God, amen. Amen. The word amen means trust, right? We trust the goodness and the integrity, right, of this prayer. Amen. Amen. So I want to talk a little bit, right, with you today about two things. And it's kind of part one and part two. And I want to talk about how we have to celebrate our heroes that have gotten lost, right? And critique our heroes that need critiquing, okay? And I'm going to start with the first part and go to the second part. So here's the first part. Something happened in the capital of the United States. And I want to talk about it for all the reasons I said in the beginning, right? Because it's a world event. It's not an American event. I'm not going to talk about it. We could talk about it for hours. There's an enormous amount that actually needs to be said. There's an enormous amount of confusion around it, around the globe. But I want to just limit it to a couple of points that are key to how we actually develop and evolve, right, our very humanity, right? Evolve the very core of who we are, evolve our public culture, right? And its deepest way, how we actually avoid dystopia and enter utopia, and we create discourse that matters. So I'm going to start with what's somewhat the unpopular side for most of our community. I want to start there, and then I want to go to, right, the second side, right, which is you'll be able to hear a little bit easier, but I want to start with the unpopular side because it's really important. So it's very, very clear that Joe Biden won the election in America. That's very clear. And it's very clear that the courts checked for voter fraud, and the courts decided in 63 out of 64 cases that there was no voter fraud that was sufficient to overturn the election. That's 2. 3, is there voter fraud in elections? Yes. I've studied voter fraud extensively, done quite a lot of research. One of our board members and our senior scholar, Dr. Venu, who's a leading doctor in Houston, Texas, and a man of enormous integrity, right? Venu did an extensive first-person and third-person study of voter fraud. And there absolutely is voter fraud in American elections that needs to be dealt with. We would have been wiser, right, to actually acknowledge that. Yes, there is voter fraud. Voter fraud is an issue that needs to be dealt with. It's not a trumped up issue. It's not a fabricated issue. There's a history of voter fraud which takes place in multiple ways, and we recognize that. And in this election, we've checked very clearly, and whatever voter fraud there might have been on both sides, the Democratic and the Republican side, it was minor and in no sense was grounds to overturn the election. Excuse me. But what happened was, and I tracked this through, multiple media posts, dozens and dozens, there wasn't an essential acknowledgement of shadow. And the acknowledgement of shadow, where you recognize the lower self in the individual person and the lower self in society, once you can actually say, yeah, there's an issue, right? Voter fraud is a real issue. And one of the ways, right, that Donald Trump was able to actually rile up, right, his base in a frenzy of disinformation was because the mainstream news channels denied that voter fraud was an issue in American society. It is an issue. There's an enormous amount of data on it, and it's an extensive and complex topic that deserves real attention, right? Had we said that, owned the shadow, right, then we could have dealt with the issue far more powerfully. That's a very big deal. I want you to understand that, because what happens? Let's say you're living, I don't know where you're living in Montana, and you hear this whole conversation about voter fraud coming out of, right, particular echo chambers on Parler, which is one social media platform, on 4chan, which is another social media platform, right? And they're talking about voter fraud. And they actually bring extensive evidence for voter fraud, not in this election, but there's been voter fraud issues since at least 1960, minimally, right, in terms of major structural issues, right? What actually happened in the 1960 election? And did the Democrats actually steal the 1960 election? Was Joseph Kennedy responsible, right, for fixing and rigging of voter machines? Is a very real question, which there's real historical debate on. But what happened is, when you then went to the liberal mainstream news channels, everyone says there's never any voter fraud. But that's not true, right? That's not true at all, right? And I could cite you chapter and verse now for a half hour. That's not true. There is voter fraud, and it's lived on both sides of the aisle. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. Had we acknowledged that shadow, then, right, people, oh, right, then people would have said, right, I trust the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is actually acknowledging that shadow. It's a real thing. And we're now ascertaining, based on the best information and investigation, right, by the courts, that actually there was not sufficient voter fraud on either side to change the results of the election. Right? You get that, everybody? It's a very big deal. Acknowledge shadow. Acknowledge lower self. It's what makes you trustable. So that's number one, right? And here's the second thing, and it's a big deal. Okay, and then we're gonna say a couple of really, really important things. It's really important to get that what happened in the American Capitol was a horror. There's no justification for it. You can't say, well, you know, in Black Lives Matter rallies, right, things got unruly, and things did get unruly, and the press didn't hold Black Lives Matter rallies accountable. That's actually true. And there was looting and burning that cost many, many, many poor and lower income families, right, their livelihood for generations. It ruined people's lives. There was, you know, unimaginable, horrific violence in sometimes 12 cities at once. That's all true. And it was out of bounds, even as the Black Lives Matter movement itself, at its core, right, is speaking for a deep integrity, right, and speaking at systemic racism, which is a dimension, right, of reality that needs to be addressed in a real way. But actually, you don't get to say, I want you to stay really close with me, you don't get to say, oh, because rallies at shopping malls or even at state capitals, right, got out of hand, right, that's actually comparable with what happened in Washington. It's not comparable. What happened in Washington was not a rally that got out of hand. It was, and I want to get this straight because it's really important just to say clearly, right? It was a deliberate part of a larger attempt, right, by a sitting American president, right, to not allow a peaceful transfer of power. And that just needs to be said, and we need to say it clearly, right? Trump was given many opportunities to allow for a peaceful transfer of power. He was asked 6 or 7 times. He refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power, number one, right? Number two, right, his son that day says, we're coming for you. You're not heroes, you're zeros. Rudy Giuliani, his lawyer, says, right, the people who are voting the wrong way, right, should be subject to trial by combat, which is a medieval phrase which indicates, right, that if you engage in combat and you die, therefore you're guilty, right? That's just unconscionable, right? Trump himself says, we're never going to take that same day. We're never going to take back our country with weakness, right? We're not going to take it anymore, right? Earlier on, in many tweets, he said January 6th, big stuff coming down the pike, right? And in his kind of situation room, he was initially watching and cheering what was happening. I mean, that's a travesty, right? That's not the same thing as riots that got out of hand, which were unconscionable. I want to make that really clear, right? And when that wasn't acknowledged by certain dimensions of the media, and the destruction, which was horrific, right, which cost people their lives, right, their livelihoods, right? That's a big deal. Having said that, that's not comparable, right? The comparison that's being made, right, all over the right-wing media, right? The Democrats are hypocrites because look, right, how they didn't speak up in the Black Lives Matter rallies that got out of hand. First off, the Democrats did speak up. Biden spoke up and Harris spoke up. It was too little, it was too late, but they did speak up. But no, they're not comparable, right? Breaching the Capitol, right, with the intention to possibly get yourself killed, because the people who went to breach the Capitol were willing to give up their lives, but for a false cause, right? Causing 5 deaths, but violating, right, with intention, right, to disturb the essential process of government and the peaceful transition of power, right, screaming, hang Mike Pence, wearing T-shirts that said Camp Auschwitz, right, all right, essentially undermining the integrity of America's capacity to act in the world, right? That's a horror, right? There's no way to justify that. There's no comparison between that and anything else, right? And that has to be held accountable. And that's a very big deal. So I want to just kind of say that, right, as clearly as we can, right? 5 people died that day, right? It's like, wow. Okay, so that's 2. Okay, 3. Okay, 3, we together? We okay? Everyone here? Just give me a check. And everyone doing okay? We tracking? Okay, okay, so 3. And it's 3 and 4. And 4 is the big one, but I want to get to 3 and 4. Here's 3. It's simply not true. And I want to offer something really important about how we critique our heroes and how we celebrate our heroes. And this is the essence of what, with your permission, I want to share with you today, because it's an enormously critical message in building our public culture, in actually creating the new human and the new humanity. One of the things I love about the sacred text, which is called Torah, the biblical text, is that it critiques its own heroes. It's unbelievably important to critique our own heroes. The left has to critique its heroes, let's say in the United States, but it can be in France, and it could be in Holland, right? And it could be in China. It doesn't matter where it is. We have to have the ability to both to celebrate the victories, to celebrate even the partial victories, to celebrate our heroes, which we're going to do today, right? And to critique our heroes. And if you're, just check in yourself. If you're, let's say you're a diehard liberal, and you think that everything that Joe Biden and Michelle Obama and Barack Obama and Kamala Harris says is right, and you won't critique them when they're dead on wrong, right? Then you've become a puppet. You've lost your inwardness. And if you're a Republican, and I don't want to compare it to Trump because Trump is sui generis, but if you're a Republican, you're not willing to critique George Bush or Ronald Reagan, right? Or any of your other Republican heroes or the Republican Party, but you're always critiquing the other side, then you've lost your interiority. You've lost your capacity for discernment. You've lost your freedom. You've become a parrot. Or you've lost something essential in your humanity. Okay? So although I voted for Joe Biden and thought that Donald Trump needed to be out of office, I want to just say that one of the things we've got to be very careful about, and Barack Obama has been guilty of this, right, in this particular cycle, as has Michelle Obama, as has Kamala Harris, as has Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the most egregious, right? He said, no one's going to tell me that if those protesters in Washington had been Black Lives Matter, they wouldn't have been treated differently. What that meant was that actually it was a racial issue, right? The reason, right, that they were able to take over the Capitol is because they were white, right? And therefore they didn't meet real resistance, right? So if there's evidence for that, we should put it forth. But based on all the evidence that's in the public square today, that's actually not the case. There was actually a Black police officer who was clearly fearful for his life, right? There was a white woman who was shot at point blank range, right? One of the insurgents, right? And she needed to be shot, right? Tragically, right? You were trying to breach the Capitol, and they were screaming to hang Pence and, you know, to hurt Nancy Pelosi, right? It was the job of the Capitol Police clearly to stop the crowd. And the Capitol Police was clearly overwhelmed. And clearly, unless there's other evidence to the contrary, which hasn't been put forth, they were clearly unprepared, right? And fearful for their lives and didn't know how to handle the situation. And there's an enormous amount of material that indicates that's true. And the Capitol Police did the best job that we can. And we have to actually empathize with the Capitol Police, who did the best, right? And one of them died, right? And not suggest that they're racists, right? And that's one of the tragedies of the left today. It's called identity politics, where we make everything an issue, right, of identity politics. That's a problem. And identity politics can be, right, all women tell the truth, right? Men lie. No, that's not true. It's not a man and woman issue, but it's about human beings, right? It's not about Jews. And it's not about African Americans. Although there are Jewish issues, there are African American issues, right? There are issues which are feminist issues and masculine issues. Of course there are. But at the core, we've got to be so careful. And I understand that Joe Biden was elected because of, right, the African American vote, right? Particularly the feminine African American vote that came through for him. And isn't that gorgeous? And that's beautiful. And Biden has to be careful, like any president, of pandering, right, to his base and suggesting that the Capitol Police are racists, right? That's a big deal. Can't do that. Right? That's identity politics. And I say this in the spirit of democracy, not as a, God forbid, Trumpian insult. I have the greatest respect for Joe Biden, for his decades of public service, for his goodness, right, for his integrity. And therefore, he's thrilled that I'm offering this critique, right? This is respectful dialogue. Right? That's how it works. Respect means that we can disagree. And just like the biblical texts that I grew up on critiques its heroes, Moses, right, gets critiqued. Abraham gets critiqued, right? When we're able to love and critique our heroes that we have enormous respect for, then we can create an actual dialogue. Does that make sense, everyone? Who's got that? Who's got that? Who can, just in the chat box, tell me if you've got that. Can you feel that? Who can feel that? Okay, that's a critical point. And now I want to get to the most important point, okay? Now I want to get to the most important point. That was all in a certain sense, and we're at top of the hour, so I'm gonna do, just to give you a sense of where we are, I won't do first principles and first values. We'll do that next week. I want to finish this point, so we'll be able to finish this point in a big way, okay? Does that work for everyone? So I don't want to go too long over, so we'll focus on first principles and first values now. Okay, excuse me, we'll focus on completing this. So we've talked about critiquing our heroes. I want to talk about celebrating our heroes, because this is a big celebration moment, okay? And there's two sets of heroes to celebrate here, okay? And the first set of heroes to celebrate is, I want to celebrate, right, starting with the Women's March in 2017, right, and the Me Too movement, right, and the enormous amount of activism, right, in the Democratic Party, right, which actually activated, right, a groundswell movement. There were 160 million Americans who voted, right? That's unbelievable, right? And I also want to actually energize and honor, right, the 74 million Americans who actually believed in the importance of Make America Great Again, which I believe in as well, although I believe that critical value has nothing to do with Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump actually stood and stands against making America great again. And he was the wrong symbol, right? And he led his own people astray, and he broke his covenant with his own base. But I actually believe that the majority of people, the 74 million who voted for Donald Trump, it's because they believed, right, in a vision of America, which actually most of us share. An important vision of America. It's not a redneck vision of America, right? It's a vision of free elections, right? It's a vision of family, right? It's a vision of value. And actually that which unites us, right, as citizens of the world, right, and as participants in democracy, and for those who live in America as Americans, right, is far greater than that which divides us. And I want to wildly honor the 160 million Americans, that's a record turnout, who participated in the democratic process. That's a big deal. That's gorgeous. That's a gorgeous victory for democracy, which is why I also want to honor, now stay with me, right, all of the Republican officials who said that Donald Trump has a right to go through the courts and offer evidence, right, of voter fraud. I honor all those every Republican who said that deserves to be honored, right? Because it's true, right? In other words, if you have evidence, right, in a democracy, right, which deserves, right, and we went through the courts, and 63 judges, many of them Republican appointed, and we'll talk about that in a second, threw out Trump's claims. And then it's over. Then democracy worked. And then after going through his due right to challenge the elections, what Donald Trump needed to do was to get on television and say, I exercised my due right, and now I want to congratulate right, my opponent, Joe Biden, for fighting a hard fight and winning, and you have my full support. Oh my God, would have blown my heart open, right? It would have blown all our hearts open. Who can feel that? Hey, just tell me who can feel that. Who can feel that? Who can feel it? Just feel that. Feel the goodness of it, right? Feel the goodness of it, right? That's what a moment. That's the moment that we needed, okay? But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Now stay with this for a second, okay? Stay with this. There were great heroes that need to be recognized. And these heroes are really important. And I want to share with you a couple of these heroes because the reason, so for example, and these are, and I was talking, Christine and I were talking about this yesterday and we were crying. I want to share with you, we've critiqued our heroes. I want to celebrate, right, this unseen group of heroes because really there's an virtually unseen group of heroes whose names actually will be sung in history, who actually held our democracy together. And I've always believed in our democracy. I said to my friend, my dear friend, Sally Kempton, who's a wonderful teacher and a brilliant liberal activist, and who was very afraid of all sorts of things that she said would happen. And I said, Sally, none of them are going to happen. Right? Republicans and Democrats are good, and they believe in democracy, and people are going to do the right thing. And I'm absolutely sure of it. And friends, that's what happened. So I want to just cite some people who are heroes who deserve celebration. And here's the thing, they're Republicans. I'm going to talk to you about some Republicans now. And it's a big deal. So first, Brett Kavanaugh and the new Chief Justice Barrett, Amy Barrett. Everybody thought in key votes before the election, because they were appointed by Trump, that they would vote the way Trump wanted to, and they didn't, right? Decisively and clearly, right? Kavanaugh and Barrett voted their integrity and their reading of the law and defied Donald Trump. Can we just give like a big, if you can, just like a big, just like, thank you. Let's write, what should we write in? What should we write in the chat box? Let's just write yay. How about just like yay or wow, right? For Brett Kavanaugh, right? And for Justice Amy Barrett, yay, thank you. Thank you, you guys were awesome, right? And we trusted you and we disagree with you about so many things, right? We can write, but we can actually recognize that you stood in integrity and we can celebrate you. Number two, William Barr, Bill Barr, who I've said consistently, right, that he's been demonized. And I've studied him. I've studied his writings, right, his background. I think he made some significant mistakes along the way in the Trump presidency. I get why he stayed, why he wanted to be an adult in the room, but he actually not only refused to lend the Justice Department's backing to Trump's fabricated claims, but he declared publicly, I see no evidence of fraud that could have changed the result. He went way beyond the call of duty. But he could have been a Trump henchman, and Trump was still at that point the most popular person in the Republican Party. And he said, I'm not doing this. William Barr, thank you. Let's give him a yay, right? Who's giving him a yay? Let's yay, wow. Yay, wow. Give him a yay, a thank you, a yay, a wow, right? So William Barr, that's a very, very big deal, right? Number three, we're celebrating now. Fox News. Fox News calls the election for, in Arizona, calls Arizona for Biden, and then calls the election for Biden. And it's very clear that Trump was putting enormous pressure, right, on Fox News not to do that. And Fox News clearly and unequivocally, right, said no to Trump, right, lost an enormous amount of its own viewership, so acted against its own self-interest and actually called the election appropriately, right, and critiqued Trump. Right? And they have not veered from that position, right? They have not. They've reported on the voter fraud claims of Trump, right? But they have not veered from that position, right? And let's just get that. That's a huge yay, okay? That's a huge yay. And at least for the first time, had they not done that, then we would have split the universe of America. But they didn't, right? They didn't, and they behaved with great integrity. That's number three, okay? Number four, for all of the Republican politicians who actually said, and they said, Trump deserves his day in court, and after his day in court's over, we have to uphold whatever the court says. They deserve a big yay. That's a big yay. That's a big thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Right? Thank you for doing the right thing. Thank you for not succumbing to what you thought was the interests of your separate self. But let's go deeper. I want to go deep here for a second because it's much more dramatic, friends, than even that. What did Trump need? What Trump needed in order to make this work from his perspective is he needed, right, a court to rule what's called technically that the states had failed to make a choice. That's a technical legal structure. He needed a court or two to rule that way. And he needed that in order to move, right, key people, right, GOP, Republican legislators to refuse to certify elections. That's what he needed to happen. He needed a couple of courts to go his way. There was court after court with Republican appointed judges who ruled against Trump. So I want to give a huge applause to all the Republican judges, right, who ruled against Trump. And let's just feel that, okay? You guys came through. You guys upheld the law. That's fantastic. But now go to the next step. And here's where it gets even more dramatic, right? Trump assumed that he would be able to pressure, right, legislators not to, everyone, you ready for this? Not to certify the elections. Now, had he been able to do that, then what would have happened is, right, had he had been able to get key Republican officials not to certify the results of the elections, let's say in 3 states, then the Republican legislators could have appointed new electors, right, to be in the American Electoral College, which could have voted for Trump. Now, this is an amazing story. I want you to really get this, friends, right? All the key Republican officials, even those whose careers completely depended on the Republican Party, which was then and is still to a large extent controlled by Trump, they all said no. And I want to just cite to you 4 heroes. This is a very big deal, okay? There's a man whose name should be remembered in history, and I want to make sure I pronounce it right. We all know I'm not good at name pronunciations. His name is Aaron. I'm going to ask someone to write it in the chat box. Aaron is his first name, Aaron. Anyone got this? Aaron. Aaron. Jackie, stay with us, right? Right. Aaron Van, V-A-N. Second name, L-A-N-G, E-V-E-L-D-E. Langeveld. L-A-N-G-E-V-E-L-D-E. Langeveld. Right? Aaron Van Langeveld. So who is he? So Aaron Van Langeveld is the man who was needed by Trump to refuse to certify the results of the election in Michigan. There were 2 people that Trump needed for certification, 2 Republicans. One had already agreed not to certify, and Trump put enormous pressure through, and you can't even imagine the pressure on this man. You can't even imagine the pressure, and he's Dutch, looks like, right? And I want to just read you a description of him, okay? Is that okay, everyone? Right? The man in the rimless glasses and a paisley tie who clutched a pen as if in self-defense. Van Langeveld, a boyish-looking 40-year-old, held a part-time position in Michigan's election bureaucracy. By great misfortune, he had attracted the attention of Donald Trump, who was 3 weeks into a desperate struggle to erase his defeat at the ballot box. Trump wanted him and put inordinate pressure on him through so many means to block the certification, right, of Michigan's presidential vote. The monstrous pressure that descended upon Van Langeveld is not easy to convey. He was one of 2 Republicans on the 4-person board of state canvassers. Trump needed them both to sabotage the certification, and one of them had already signed on to the Trump team. State and national party leaders are broadcasting lies about enough fraud to overturn the election all over. The president himself and a parade of the leading figures in the country on the Republican side sent messages to Van Langeveld that he must follow along or bear the consequences. He ducked their calls. He didn't take their calls. He goes off the grid. The observers, everyone thought, right, he would resign. He didn't resign, right? All 83 county authorities reported in Michigan. Michigan's made up of counties, subsectors. All 83 counties reported valid election results, meaning there was not fraud to overturn anything, right? He's asked, the entire country's looking. He's been subject to enormous pressure, right? He's asked, are you certifying these results, right? Van Langeveld leans forward, holds the mic, and he says calmly, he says, the board's duty is very clear. We have a duty to certify this election based on the returns. And he goes on and he says, I've had a pretty good chance to look at the law these last few days, as you can imagine. I've found nothing that gives us the authority to review complaints of fraud. Right? He said, we have no authority to do that. Right? I'm not going to actually be a pawn. And he came through. Oh my God. Does everyone get that? Does everyone get that? That's a big deal. That's a big deal. He came through. But not only did he came through, okay, I just want to just kind of keep going, right? Emily Murphy, right, who's the head of the General Services Administration, right, who was pressured by Trump not to release funds. So once Van Langeveld came through, she issues a statement that she had ascertained that Joe Biden was the successful candidate and that the certification of election results have now happened, and she's releasing the funds against Trump's wishes, right, to allow the transition to take place. Emily Murphy, right? Aaron Van Langeveld. Let's give you guys a huge applause. And it was acts of virtue like this. Let's keep going. In Georgia, the Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, total Republican, right, had supported Trump, right? He made a decision. He was ferociously assaulted by Trump. He was insulted, mocked in public. He was threatened. Everything dear to him was threatened. And he demanded that I'm going to get his name right, Raffensperger, right? Brad Raffensperger, right? Trump demanded that he actually recalculate the result, and Brad Raffensperger utterly refused. And then Brian Kemp, right? Brian Kemp was a major Trump supporter, who's the governor of the state, Republican, who will probably lose his reelection because of this, supported his Secretary of State. Even though Trump said that if you do that, I'm going to do everything I can to bring you down. And in Georgia, could well be that Trump could do that. So both, right, Brad Raffensperger, right, and Brian Kemp, right, went against their self-interest in order to support the doing of the right thing. And I got to tell you, friends, here's the last one. I know you're not going to like this one, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Even Mike Pence, who there's reason to criticize for sure over the last 4 years, but at the moment of decision, when Trump demanded that he use unilateral power, right, to strike down the state election results, he refused. And that's why there were the shouts of hang Pence, right, at the Capitol. Right? This is a big deal, friends. This is a very, very big deal. And I want to get this straight. These are heroes, friends. Right? These are heroes. Okay? These are heroes. Stay with us. Stay with us. Stay in here for a second, friends. Stay in here for a second. Okay? Okay? This is a big deal. Right? This is a big deal. Right? We can always explain why. So why were they heroes? And I want to go the last step here. And the last step here matters enormously. Why were they heroes? And why were there so many other Republicans, right, who actually signed on, for example, right, to 18 Republican state attorney generals who signed a symbolic letter, and 2/3 of the Republican caucus, right, in the House of Representatives signed a letter, right, challenging the election results? Why did those people do one thing and these people did another thing? And I think there's two reasons, and I think we need to understand both of them. Okay, let's stay close with this, friends. Let's stay close with this. One is character. Character matters. Integrity, character, meaning stepping out of the bubble of pressure upon you and finding the value that lives inside of you and listening to that voice of integrity. So these men and women, from Amy Barrett to Brett Kavanaugh, to Brad Raffensperger, right, to Brian Kemp, to Aaron, right, pronounce his beautiful last name for me, somebody. Right, I'm going to look it up over here. Aaron, where's his name? Right, where's his name? Right, thank you. Right. Beautiful. Right. I mean, these people did gorgeously. Right. Aaron Van Langeveld. Right. All these people did gorgeously. They had character. But it's even deeper than that. I want to get something with you. You see, the Republicans that moved to support Trump, for the most part, I'm not talking about the people on 4chan and Parler, right, who themselves were victims of a broken information ecology where they were actually doused with lies. And they actually believed they were saving their democracy, but they acted in ways that needed to be countered, right, and defeated with full force, right? They were acting as insurrectionists. It's a big deal, right? But I want to get this straight. But I'm talking about the Republicans who signed all these letters. Why did they do it? So they did it because they thought what they were doing was only symbolic. You see, almost unilaterally, when it came down to actually doing something that would actually change the game, like the actual Republicans, and I just mentioned 7 of them, 8 of them, or whether it was in the Supreme Court, whether it was in the legislators, whether it was governors, whether it was state attorney general, right? They actually acted with integrity. That's a big deal. And it's democracy worked. And I want to get that we can celebrate for this moment, we got to celebrate partial victories. We've talked about this before. We don't only celebrate a complete victory, we celebrate partial victories, right? It's a big deal. Remember, we talked about the story of Hanukkah, which is one particular holiday in the Hebrew wisdom calendar. Hanukkah was a partial victory, but we celebrate partial victories. This was a huge and gorgeous partial victory for democracy. The mistake of the Republicans, both throughout Trump's term, right, and those who supported him in this moment in these symbolic acts, was not to understand that symbols matter, right? They thought we're just going to lend words. These are just words, right? These are not actually policies. And I can't tell you the amount of Republicans that I respect who told me we're backing Trump because his policies in these particular sets of areas matter, even though his words are terrible and I'm completely embarrassed by him. That's a mistake. We forgot that words express our interiority, right? Words express the feeling tone of cosmos, right? When a president makes fun of handicapped people, right? And that's not just words. That's a violation of the integrity of the cosmos. It's not okay, right? And people like my friend, Dennis Prager, who I've known for many years, I haven't talked to him in a long time, who supported Trump throughout. And Dennis said, he said to me at his home one night, right, 15 years ago, and he said countless times, he said, the reason I support Trump is because we don't judge a president on character. We judge a president on their policy, right? That might have been partially true up to Trump. It was no longer true. Trump broke that rule because in him, character became policy, right? A child in America couldn't grow up, right, with a sense of a model for what it means to be a human being, right, which shattered American youth, right? And America couldn't stand, right, in the world because, right, it didn't have, right, the integrity and moral authority it needed to stand. And you lose moral authority when a president, right, makes fun of handicapped people. When a president says publicly he says, right, I'm a good businessman, so therefore, right, I don't pay my contractors because I can get away with not paying them and I save money on contracts. Trump said that in the second debate against Hillary Clinton. Oh my God. And the second he said that, I was done. I was sitting at Terry Nelson's house. You remember Terry? I said, oh my God, that's not okay. Interiority matters. Character matters. Values matter. Policy has to be put aside. And we got to understand that which unites us is so much greater than that which divides us. And that actually we're part of a world-centric movement towards the good, the true, and the beautiful. And it's not about Democrat and Republican. We want a strong Republican Party that stands for the true values of the Republican Party. And the huge test today is for the Republican base, right, to actually shift and take the party back. And that's utterly essential. We want a Republican Party. We want a Libertarian Party. We want a Green Party. We want a Democratic Party. We want a pluralistic democracy that functions in an exciting and potent and powerful way. We want to be able to celebrate heroes and critique our heroes. Democracy is the most important institution. It took, oh my God, right? Once we got to that point of evolution, it took 10,000 years to get to democracy. Democracy itself is a momentous leap of evolution. We have to protect it. And democracy means 2 things. And with this, we'll finish. It means, number 1, we don't do identity politics. Democracy means that every human being has individual rights And our rights are not based on being Black or Jewish or a man or a woman. They're based on the individual facts in a particular case. We judge each person based on their humanity. And in that sense, identity politics is a regression, right, to a pre-democracy era, right, in which people are judged not by the content of their character, but by the color of their skin or by their gender anatomy. That's critical. We got to stand against that. And we have to stand against anyone who would allow ostensible policy, as important as it is, right, to actually suffer, right, a violation of integrity and decency in the public square every single day, which poisoned, right, the very fabric, right, of American democracy for 4 years. And the people that supported Trump, right, ultimately, after he crossed all those lines, not okay, right? Not okay, friends, not okay. We got to draw the line there. And we have to celebrate our heroes. We have to celebrate, right, the incredible integrity and goodness, right, where people did what they should have done. And the reason we have to celebrate, and we can't let it go, everyone thought that wouldn't happen. All of my dear friends, right, who are staunch Democrats were sure that this wasn't going to happen. And they listed, right, and the mainstream media listed a whole set of things that would happen. None of them happened. Democracy stood because people stood in their virtue, in their goodness, and in their integrity. Let's trust each other again. Let's trust each other again. Let's reach our hands around the world across party lines, and let's trust good people to stand. And we can trust good people to stand if we actually stand for those virtues and we make them real every day, all the time. Oh my God. Cha. Yeah, so Krista, take us inside. Outrageous acts of love. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. And Joycey, that was for you. Okay. Krista, take us inside.
Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will by the path of the name. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. Don't walk in front of me, and don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend, and together we will walk in the path of the name. And together we will walk in the path of the name. And together we will walk in the path of the name. And we are all invited to walk together in the path of the name. And I'm so honored to invite you to walk with us. Every week I'm here to invite you to make your contributions and share all the beautiful ways that you can step in and participate in this important revolution. So the first thing that I want to do is actually say that differently. It's about making your contribution, but it's also about joining us and becoming part of this band of outrageous lovers. And that is a pleasure. We are loving each other up all throughout the week and helping each other, reminding each other, writing each other outrageous love letters, reminding each other of the outrageous love that pours through us. So let me show you, first of all, our beautiful website, which is onemountainmanypaths.org. And I know many of you are watching us through our live streams on Facebook. So I just want to invite you. On the homepage, you can actually register for free, and that way you will receive the Zoom link where this broadcast is held. And this is also where our band of outrageous lovers is super active in the chat. So if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, I invite you right after to register and become part of our evolutionary family, as we say it. On this website, you can also find here on the watch page beautiful clips that our friends and volunteers are creating every week. We have our weekly replay. So if you register, you will receive the replay every Tuesday in your inbox, but also every Thursday we send out a beautiful featured clip. And I want to ask you to help us to reach as many hearts as we can together and to share this important message with the world so we can give the world another sound, a sound of outrageous love and the sound of the revolution. So I want to ask you to step in and actually go ahead and look at these clips and share them with your friends and invite your friends to join us here every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So this is the page where you can find these clips. And if you go here to membership, this is our invitation for you to step in even deeper and become a member of our revolution. And as a member, you get access to our online community where we meet and hang out with each other. We have beautiful spaces online where we practice together and study together. So you will get access to that. But also we have a weekly writing group happening every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, where Christina Emlong leads us in writing to the evolutionary love codes. So this week's code, tomorrow we will write to it together. And that is a way to embody the Dharma and enact the Dharma and start to feel it moving in you, as you, and through you, as we say. Also, if you become a member, you get access to 9 beautiful courses. If you scroll down, you will find all the courses here. And as Marc is now speaking more and more these weeks about awakening your unique self. So if you want to learn more about that, here is the course. And it is a 7-week course with hours and hours of Dharma on unique self. So I really encourage and invite you to come and study these beautiful courses with us. And also members together are studying together in study groups. Right now we are studying Reclaiming Eros every other week on Saturday. So that's another opportunity for you to meet and study and hang out together. And the beautiful thing is,
you can choose your own unique contribution. It starts already from $25 a month, which is absolutely nothing if you see all the amazing content that you receive for it. So we also encourage everyone to give as much as you can. We are all invited to give as much of our resources as we can. Some people are pouring in hours and hours of their time, 20 hours a week, 30, 40 hours a week, just to contribute to this revolution. But if you have financial resources available, please help this revolution happen and make a monthly contribution or even a one-time donation right here so we can take this to the next level. And one of the ways that we are doing that, if you click here on resources, you can find the books page. And this is the main big projects that Dr. Marc Gafni and many others are working on together, which is publishing a great library, which means all of the first principles and first values written down in so many different books, so many different topics. So on this page, you can already find a lot of the books that already have been written by Dr. Marc Gafni and also, of course, our beloved Barbara Marx Hubbard. And you can find all of these books here on this page. So I invite you to take a look and, of course, order your copy. But also just to let you know that this is all in process and many more wonderful books will be published soon. And we really would love your help making that happen. Last but not least, acts of love. Maybe even the most important thing. On this page, you can read more about outrageous acts of love and what it means to become an outrageous lover. We live in a world of outrageous pain, and the only answer is outrageous love. So how do we do that? How do we enact this in the world? Where do we find the courage to step into the world and love the world open every day? So on this page, you can read what outrageous love is, but you are also invited to participate in committing outrageous acts of love. And we share our outrageous acts of love stories on our Facebook page, which is, of course, also called Outrageous Acts of Love. So right after this, I invite you to take a look on Facebook on this page, and you will find beautiful stories from our community sharing what is happening in our unique corner of the world. What love are we enacting in the world? And you are invited to join us. So please click here on the community page. This is where all of you can post. And I encourage you and invite you to share your beautiful love stories here on this page so we can inspire the world to love ever more deeper. Thank you so much for being with us here, for placing your attention on the evolution of love. And I can't wait to come closer with you, to meet you in one of our spaces and to be together again next week. Thank you so much. And with that, I give my word back to you, beloved Marc.
Oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Krista. Everybody, how deep is your love? Right? Have the most gorgeous week. Let's be inside. COVID's happening all around the world, friends. I want to just say as we close, right, as Christina Amelon and Suzette pull up How Deep Is Your Love, right, COVID's happening all over the world. Right? The highest death rates in COVID are happening now. We're not at the end of this. It's going to take probably another year. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, right? Choosing each other time and again through this time and actually enacting this revolution and finding each other and loving each other beyond imagination. So how deep is your love, right? Take us inside and let's just love each other like insanely and wildly. Amen, everybody. Oh my God. God.
Hi,
What's the here?
Monica dancing.
Hello. Happy birthday, Jamie. Happy birthday, Jamie.
To you.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Love you guys.
Jamie.
Happy
birthday to you.
Versatile. Yay.
And Tom. Monica.
Welcome, welcome, Jason.
Suzette.
Hello, Judith.
Hey,
Krista.
Oots.
Welcome, Ujis.
Kathy. Hey, Kathy.
Beautiful singing, Krista. Beautiful singing, Krista.
Thank you.
So good to see you all.
So good to see
Xochitl.
your faces. I want to hang out slowly.
Raquel. Joyce.
Great singing, Krista. Beautiful.
Beautiful, Krista.
Hey, Sharon.
Hi, Sherry.
Everyone, see you again next week.
Benjamin.
Your voice, Krista.